guys, it's Sam, and today I'm going to talk about series that I have DNF'd. So I've gotten a couple of requests for this since I've been talking about like authors that I gave up on or series that I do plan to continue or whatever. Just like with my recent author video about authors I've given up on, I do not give a rat's ass if you finish these series. I'm not telling you that you don't need to finish these series. I'm not telling you that these series are something that you necessarily shouldn't be reading. Like, I do not care. I am not trying to sway anyone any kind of way, and the reason I'm saying this is because while I know the majority of you are very intelligent, empathetic individuals who understand these concepts, I still get some comments that are just so annoying and draining, and I just would rather not have them. So if you want to fight with me in the comments on this video, I will probably not engage with you. Just know that, because I don't care. But if you want to have a nice civil conversation, I'm totally down for that. If you want to talk about how a series that I didn't finish you like loved and here's why, totally down for that. Love to see that. But I picked 10 series that are fairly popular. There's more than this that I've DNF'd. But these are 10 series that I'd say are pretty popular in the book community. And these are ones that stuck out to me the most as ones that people might not know that I actually ended up DNFing. So let's get into it. The first is Chaos Walking by Patrick Ness. This is, or it's, yes, the Chaos Walking series. Oh, that's Living in the City. I read the first book, The Knife of Never Letting Go, and didn't enjoy it. While I understand that this is something that is going to be very hit or miss for people, that some people might enjoy it and others might not, I just happen to be somebody that didn't enjoy it. I can see that it has value. It's not poorly written, it just wasn't for me. I didn't really connect to the characters. It has some content that I didn't enjoy, and I just didn't see that there would be enough of a payoff for me to continue, but I have heard, you know, the series gets better as you keep reading. I just wasn't invested enough to want to see how that changed. So I ended up DNFing this one. The second series is the Villains series by V.E. Schwab. This one shouldn't have even been a series, and that's why I like technically DNF'd it. I consider Vicious a standalone novel. It did not need to continue. The second book was not good in my opinion, and there's going to be a third, and I do not care. Will I potentially read it? I guess maybe, if there's a lot of like discussion about it or greatly improves or whatever. But in my eyes right now, I have DNF'd this because I have no want or desire to continue with this series because it should have been the one book. Then we have one that I haven't talked about in a while, but I'm sure a lot of you know, and that is the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. I read the first 3 books. After the 3rd book, I was kind of thinking I'd continue, but then I ended up seeing a lot of reviews from people that I trusted that felt similarly about the books to me that were not good, and so I decided to not continue, and I really feel like there's other authors that are better than Sarah J. Maas at this kind of fantasy. I will say that, I don't know what this is, but I was just talking on my live stream with the Bibliothecary, which I do every month if you're interested in doing an exclusive live stream with me. But I was talking about how I sort of had this weird compulsion to continue with this series now that it's been 5 years since I've read it. I wouldn't go back and read the first 3 again. I would almost start it as like a new trilogy, because I remember the bare bones of like the first 3. So like, yes, this is DNF. I don't think I'm actually gonna do this, but I do have this like weird, like, I kind of want to do a project where I do this as somebody who's like not super invested, is not like a Sarah J. Maas stan, and like what would it be like to read these for just like fluff purposes? I don't know. I might do that, but really in my head it's like a DNF series. Then we have the Fairyland series by Catherine Valente. This is the second series that's a favorite of Maddie from My Name is Maddie Ness that I haven't liked. But you can still be friends with somebody and not have the same taste in books. Wild. But this is a middle grade series that is just weird and like eccentric and kind of cute, and I maybe could go back and read it, but I just wasn't that invested in it. I read the first book and like wasn't super attached. I always appreciate what Valente does, but it's just not for me, really. I never get super connected to it. Sometimes I think about it after, like in the case of Deathless, which was a standalone, and I was totally fine with that. But I wasn't really invested enough to continue with the series, especially a middle grade one, because middle grade is not my jam. But I know this is very magical, but I find that Valente stuff is very hit or miss for people. You either love it or hate it. Then we have The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. I recently talked about Alexandra Bracken as an author that I'm not going to continue with because she's just not for me. There's something about her writing. I got a couple comments on the authors I'm not going to continue with video, authors I'm finished with, that were like, can you explain why you don't like these authors by just saying they're not for me? And I'm like, I kind of can't. Like, there's something about her writing that I just don't like. Like, it doesn't jive with me. Maybe it's slow, maybe it's like, it's not poor You know, it's not like she can't construct a sentence. There's just something about her particular style that I can't quite describe that doesn't work for me. And that's how I felt about The Darkest Minds. I also read it after a lot of the hype had passed, and it was kind of the end of the young adult dystopian phase, and I was just over it. I was just not interested, and I wasn't really connected to these characters and didn't really care a ton about this world, and this just kind of like YA dystopian thing, tropiness, I was just done with at that point. Then we have the Red Queen series by Victoria Aveyard. This is one that I really thought I was gonna like when I first read it. I had heard so much hype for the first book before it came out that people were like, this is amazing, this is great, I loved it, oh my god. And I went in with such high hopes, and then it disappointed me so much with how just like bland and derivative it felt for me. I know a lot of people really like it, and it's like a guilty pleasure for a lot of people. I just could not care less, and I barely remember it. And then to potentially read 3 more books in that world, in that series, no, I was definitely not interested in any of that. Then we have Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, and this seems to be pretty well received. This is a YA science fiction series that people seem to really like. I could not connect to our main character. I did not care. I did not care about the side characters. The world was kind of interesting enough, but there's other sci-fi that I would much rather read, and I wasn't connected enough to this to care, so I decided to DNF this one. Then we have Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson. This was super disappointing because The Kiss of Deception is one of my favorite series, and this is set in the same world and everything, and I just was not at all interested. The way that the two sort of like get together and their feelings and all of it was just like so insta-lovey and not good when the first series was so like slow burn, and I was just not at all invested for a series that took place in a world that I really love. So it just felt like a completely different writing style, completely different author, like so disappointing. So I decided to not continue with this series at all. Then we had the Malediction Trilogy by Danielle L. Jensen, and this was one that was pretty popular when I first joined BookTube, and I read it fairly recently, within the last couple of years, and it wasn't for me. Again, it felt so like old now. With the way the YA goes so fast and changes so much, it felt so typical of the time it was written. I was so not interested, and it was blah for me, so I have no interest in continuing with that series. And lastly is the most recent series that's been added to this list, and that is the Something Dark and Holy series by Emily A. Duncan. I'm not gonna sit here and go over everything that happened. Please use Google or Twitter or whatever resource that you can. But basically some information has come to light about this author and their anti-Semitism in the work, and some of their racism and possibly bullying actions outside of that I am not interested in continuing with the series, especially because the series has always been like very disappointing to me. I was very hyped about it before it first came out, and then as you all know if you've watched my reviews, it's very aesthetically kind of cool, but the delivery just isn't there with the characters, with the romance, with just like plot pieces. Like it has so much potential and it just doesn't meet that for me. So the whole series has been like 2 to 3 stars, just kind of like blah, but I was gonna finish it just to see like, okay, does this wrap up in a way that is satisfying at all? I've already read the first 2 books, I might as well read the 3rd one, whatever. And this information came to light. But it was very easy for me to say no. In this case, I feel no desire to continue. I was just kind of seeing where it went. But especially for an author who has admitted in their apology on Twitter that they have done some of these things, I'm just not interested at this point. And especially as somebody who has a platform, I have to be a little more aware than maybe your average reader would about some of these things and when these things come to light. So just not something I'm interested in doing, and I wasn't invested enough in the series. I do feel bad, obviously, for the people that this person has hurt primarily, but secondary, the people who are really invested in the series, who like loved it. I know it is very popular, and there's people who like loved the series and now can't support because of the awful things that this author did, and I think that sucks. Like, I think that sucks that there's a series that people really love and that have characters they really love, that have some of these elements that maybe they weren't aware of, because not everyone is educated in everything. We can't be, you know, or that, you know, I can't imagine if something like Leigh Bardugo was revealed to be like a horrible person. Like, that would be devastating. So I think that really sucks, but that is not what happened for me. I've already been kind of like about the series anyway, willing enough to see where it was gonna go, but under these circumstances, not so much. So that is it for the series that I have DNF'd. Comment down below, let me know some series that you have DNF'd, even if they're some of my favorites, as long as you're not being rude about it. I'm totally willing to discuss that with you because books are subjective. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.